Well, hey, you know what time it is. Welcome back, everybody, to the Square, the Circle music channel. It's me, your old pal Mage. You're here again tonight. We're going to talk about what we always do. We talk about circles and squares. We talk about record collecting, music appreciation, all sorts of wonderful subjects. So, welcome back, everybody. It's been a while since I've seen you. Haven't talked to you for a while. It's been kind of a busy week. I've been doing a lot. Springtime, gardening, got the kids, doing all kinds of crazy shit. Got to go to a record show, which was fantastic. Haven't gotten to do that for a while. So I wanted to talk about music with you guys because it's that time of year, springtime, burgeoning on summertime. I start getting all kinds of like wonderful youthful feels, and I like to go over kind of just, reminisce about times and music especially that really just kind of like, made me feel so great, and it's such a wonderful part of my personal history and what I feel is a really magnificent period in rock and roll history. So I wanted to go through my favorite decade of rock and roll, which will differ with a lot of other people's opinions, but I don't give a shit because this is my fucking channel. Here at the Square of the Circle Music Channel, we worship the 90s. That's right, the 90s was my favorite period, decade of rock and roll. Just because I was fully immersed in it, man. I was just, I was still just a kid throughout most of it, but I was really gaining a real understanding of what rock music was about, what it can do to the world and the people within. I wanted to highlight the 90s tonight and just talk about my favorite fucking albums of the 90s. I'm going to go through 25 of them, a big top 25 list of the greatest albums of the 90s. They're my favorite albums of the 90s, and objectively speaking, I could argue that these are the 25 greatest albums of the 90s. So let's do that, shall we? Again, if you guys want to head over to Instagram and you want to visit me there, I'm Square the Circle Records on Instagram. Say what's up, follow me, all that jazz. But yeah, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, tell your friends. Let's just get right into it, shall we? So, not much of a trick to this little situation I'm throwing at you here. Like I said, I want to talk about what I feel is the greatest 25 albums of the 1990s. What a fantastic decade in rock and roll history. Only weird thing being, I'm not going to do any kind of real hierarchy per se, top to bottom sort of thing. I'm just going to go through them chronologically. How does that sound? That's fun. So we can all just kind of relive the experience starting from the beginning of the decade all the way through the end of the decade. And I'm just going to go over my list of 25 of what I thought was the absolute shit out of the 90s. So let's get right to it, shall we? I'm going to cheat right off the get-go. I like to kind of cheat a little bit. I like to bend the rules, bend my own rules a little bit here and there. This first album, I had to include it on this list because I adore it. It's a huge part of what I loved about rock and roll, and kind of starting from a place in the 80s where you're just not really sure you're not sure how you feel about this type of music and what it's going to do. And then it just kind of catapulted and took elements of metal and punk and kind of infused it with this weird, crazy techno underground kind of electronic music sound that was coming out of the 80s. And in the late 80s, November of 1989, 9 Inch Nails came around and they dropped Pretty Hate Machine. It was fucking hot. What a fucking amazing album. I didn't catch wind of that shit until I was a freshman in high school. So we're talking 94. So way late to the party. But I think a lot of, just kind of Everywhere USA was kind of late to the party. 9 Inch Nails was just fucking killing it. And the only people that really knew about it were the older, teenagers and young adults that were in the scene. If you were an inner city kid, and you knew about that shit, and it was fucking raging awesome, dude. Terrible Lie, do 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 do. I think I must have heard that earlier than high school. I think I heard that probably when I was in the 8th grade, and I just did not know how to feel, It's head like a hole, black as your soul. I'd rather die than give you control. Just my little 13-year-old mind is yeah, I could get on board with some of this with what he's talking about. And the music was just, I didn't know what to think about the music. It was just such a amazing wall of sound. My little like not olfactory, that's like your senses of smell and taste, but like your whatever, the prefrontal shit that absorbs all that stuff that they're throwing at you. Like, it was just such a amazing wall of sound that my brain couldn't input it and make much sense of it when I was 13, 14 years old, because it was so interesting and new to me. But yeah, fucking amazing album. So that's first on my list. Like I said, little bit of a bending the rule, kind of a cheater, real late in '89, but I just had to, an album that had to be on this list of the greatest. I don't know, they ushered in, they helped so much with ushering in that era that was coming of the 90s. And so they'll just always kind of be deep in my heart a band of the 90s. So yeah, Pretty Hate Machine. Whew. Amazing fucking album. Next on the list, we're moving into the true 90s, the tried and true 90s. Here we go. Within the same sort of wheelhouse, just kind of like that, you know, goth inspired, you know, kind of dream pop shoegaze stuff that was really awesome throughout the late 80s and had really been a huge part of rock music, especially in the UK. So, but I'm talking about Brit pop, you know, kind of dream pop rock band Nowhere, or excuse me, Ride. The album's called Nowhere. But yeah, mid 1990, you know, playing with a sound that they had really already been kind of the kings of, the creative. I would go as far as to say they were kind of creators of, like I said, that sound, that dream pop shoegaze kind of stuff, but really mixing it with some kind of like, you know, darker elements and some more kind of like just sad thematic elements. But yeah, dude, Nowhere is an amazing album. The title track is like the last track on the album. It fucking gets me every time. What's that other amazing song? The B-side on that album is fucking just killer. It's the first track on the B-side. It's called like Dreams Are Burning Down or something like that. It's fucking so incredible. The B-side, in my opinion, is far superior to the A-side on that album. But yeah, I mean, the opening track, Seagull, that's a Seagulls or whatever it's called. Great album, really great album. Incredibly underrated. And if anybody's never really listened to that album and really given it's very sonically pleasing too, just very ethereal, lots of reverb and you know, that kind of shoegazy type of stuff. But I truly feel that's definitely, it's got to be on the top 25 greatest of rock albums of the 90s. Moving a little bit later down the timeline, we're getting, you know, more familiarized with the 90s here. 1991, let's see, what was going on in 1991? Bush was still president at that point in time. We had invaded Iraq for the first time, I'm pretty sure. I had a cousin who was a tank driver over there. And so the family, we were all really nervous about all that shit with Saddam, and it was a trip. The first time around, I mean, fucking, we've been occupying that area 30 years since, you know, but the very first little kind of like tiptoeing into total control of a foreign land like that, pretty tripped out time in my family's history. But let's talk about rock music, shall we? We're getting into like what would have been like July into August of 1991, when probably one of the most seminal albums for me in my personal history, one of my favorite albums of all time, and what I've deemed as a perfect album, hit the scene. I'm talking about 10, the smash hit from American hard rockers, Pearl Jam. Has to be on the top 25 greatest 90s albums, yeah, ever. So that shit changed my life. It rewrote my little personal book. Fell in love with the music instantaneously. Eddie Vedder's just harrowing voice, just kind of dark and sinister, and just something I had not experienced out of rock and roll music yet. I was still just kind of like lapping up just kind of like the little end pieces of the 80s and pop music, and you know, still just kind of like, I was still enjoying Michael Jackson. I was still enjoying fucking Bryan Adams, and you know, I was still listening to like Tom Petty and just kind of like more just kind of not soft rock, but just kind of like moderate rock. And Pearl Jam slapped me upside the fucking head with it. And nothing better than like 2 or 3 months later, my introduction to the next one on my list. And a little bit later in 91, Nevermind. came around from Nirvana and just blew everyone's fucking wigs off, just completely back, you know? I've said this before, and it's like, you know, Pearl Jam was kind of like, they were oft made fun of because they just weren't as edgy and maybe artistic and punk, you know, as Nirvana was, because they had already been in the scene as the entity of what they were, Cobain with his, you know, Chris Novoselic and Dave Grohl. I mean, they'd been killing it, you know, with the Bleach album and Incesticide, and, you know, Buzz and Dale Crover from Melvins were like with them and touring and helping them out and making albums, and they just had like, they had so much help. And, you know, Pearl Jam, Mother Love Bone had just totally fallen apart in a really sad way with their lead singer, you know, dying from heroin overdose. And it's just kind of like, it was such a crazy happenstance of an album that they just were able to get Eddie Vedder in the mix so quickly and crank out an album that is just arguably probably one of the greatest, you know, most, how many times platinum, you know, selling, at least for Epic Records. I mean, they weren't selling records like Michael Jackson was in 1991, but, you know, whatever. It was still a pretty amazing breakthrough. And same for the boys in Nirvana, which, like I said, they had already had an established sound, an established idea. My personal favorite from Nirvana, I think Nevermind, is just every track is damn near perfect album again, just like I've said about Pearl Jam's 10. So those two bands, within those two albums, within a couple months of each other in 1991, just kind of like, what magic? What magic? Moving on down the line, 92, moving into 92, just 92 was probably the year. I toss up between 92 and 93 being the greatest years in rock, some of the greatest years in rock history. But those 2 years, here we go. I mean, starting out with Core from Stone Temple Pilots. This one will always be on my upper up list. In a lot of ways, I feel that Stone Temple Pilots, that was kind of just like where the train stopped for me. Everyone kept riding. I really did latch on to their second, what people called Purple. It was called Purple, wasn't it? That album, I played the fuck out of that, but I played it so much to the point to where I easily got sick of it, even only after a few years. And revisiting that as a as a full-blown adult, it did not age well. Unfortunately, Stone Temple Pilots to me is one of those bands that just did not age well. If you know what I mean, in many different ways. Of course, Scott Weiland dying of a heroin overdose, that sucks. But I mean, just like the music itself, not necessarily the band and how they aged and where they went and what happened. I mean, just like the music itself, you listen to those albums from that era these days, and it doesn't, I don't know, in my head, it doesn't age well, unfortunately. But Core will always be a core album of the early 90s for me, and it's the fucking shit, dude. I had rock and roll like that, like kind of just hard, really hard rock. You got that sense of kind of like, I don't know, early era, not metal, but they had a side of them was kind of like glam metal. It was just the way the DeLeo brothers, the guitar player, is it Robert DeLeo? The way he plays his guitar reminds me so much more of just kind of old bluesy kind of metal. Zeppelin, you know, the Zeppelin and the Black Sabbath, and I loved that. I hadn't really fully been introduced to that. I had no one in my family that ever introduced me to, like, you know, to Zeppelin and Sabbath and all that classic hard rock and heavy metal. So this to me was kind of like, this was heavy metal to me. I had heard Metallica's Black Album, and it was within the same year. It was like 90, no, yeah, Black was like 91. And then, yeah, this album, Core, in 92, just kind of like, again, threw my fucking hat back. I am smelling like a rose, cause I'm dead and bloated. Dun, dun. That fucking shit. Whew, so fucking heavy, dude. So heavy. Really great. The whole album, just badass. Tons of, I mean, mega platinum, tons of singles. There was at least 3 singles on that record that were MTV, all over the radio. Plush, Sex Type Thing, Wicked Garden, and even Dead and Bloated was a radio single, wasn't it? I don't know, at least 3 or 4. Yeah, magnificent album. Moving even further into 92, it just gets crazier. I think they were literally released within weeks of each other. With Stone Temple Pilots released Core, and then right after, within a couple weeks, Alice in Chains released Dirt. Like, oh my God. Which, again, Dirt is my favorite Alice in Chains album. I think it's their best work. I'm not going to say that they kind of petered out. Their Unplugged session was amazing. But it just, another one of those, just like Lane Staley, dude, he started hitting, he started hitting the bricks so hard, so fast. Methamphetamine fucks you up so hard, dude, especially when you're doing speedballs and, you know, whatever, dude. If you're slamming meth and you're slamming heroin, it's just like fucking game over really quick. But whatever, sad. No one wants to talk about that. Lane Staley, fucking amazing. But thank goodness for Jerry Cantrell and the rest of the boys. Jerry Cantrell, of course, being the predominant songwriter and singer. Everyone forgets about that. He writes all those songs and sings all those fucking vocals. And Lane Staley just, of course, hits all those really harrowing, beautiful, kind of just haunting, how he gets those harmonies, how the boys decided to use that diminished minor influence kind of like harmony style. They just, yeah, not a lot of singers and duo type of vocalist singers managed to pull off such amazing harmonies, but and remain like really unique and really creative. Yeah, love the shit out of those guys. And then again, only like a month later, Rage Against the Machine. Rage Against the Machine drops their debut self-titled album and rewrote the fucking world, rewrote American rock history. I'm sure there was artists that had done similar type things, maybe, you know, underground before them, but who cares? They certainly did it best. Tom Morello is a fucking guitar legend, a songwriting legend. The guy just fucking spits fire through his guitar, and the riffage, dude, like, talk about the fucking king godhead of riffage. Guy is responsible for so much insanely cool guitar rock. Like, he and King Buzzo from the Melvins just fucking like riff machines, dude. Like, so much material, so many great side projects, so much awesome shit, but nothing beats this, like I said, this eponymous album of theirs from late 92. Still in a room without a view. You got to know that when I say go, 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 that's like the closest thing I ever got to liking hip hop ever. Zach De La Roca, and every bit and piece of everything he threw into that band. Just that album, man. I don't know, Evil Empire was okay. And I actually really like Battle for Los Angeles. That was pretty dope. I like Battle for Los Angeles better than I like Evil Empire. But yeah, whatever. That first album of theirs, so amazing. All right, guys, I've been talking so much. I've totally lost track. I have no idea where I am. So, like I said, I'll handle this shit in post-production, but I'm just going to keep moving on down the line and not try to even think about how many I've talked about or where I am in this list. But, you know, we're moving into 93 now, early 93. How can this decade get any better? We're only in like 1993, and some of the most amazing masterpiece rock and roll albums like have been released already. Can you top it? He says yes. Yes, you can. In March of 1993, one of my favorite bands created one of my favorite albums of all time again. Again, it happened again. In March of 93, Tool released Undertow. And once again, rewrote little bits and pieces of my DNA and how I feel about life and music and everything. They opened my mind to, I guess what you could say is, as far as like, you know, deep thought. Tool was the open door to deep thought for me. You know, I was still too young for, you know, whatever, Aldous Huxley and whatever else. But yeah, I just, I can't even begin to talk about that album. the first time I mean, I think the first song I heard was, of course, Sober, but that song was still so just kind of like, it was a radio, it was just a radio song. I'd never had dug much deeper. And then when I actually got the album and I actually listened from beginning to end, and what an amazing kind of fucking ride that album is. It's got some amazing deep cuts. That's the album for Tool, like the deep cut album. Yeah, I could talk about that album for an hour and I'm not going to. But my favorite songs are the title track, Undertow, and yeah, they're all my favorites. They're all fucking amazing. Moving even crazier, only a month later, this is my favorite Primus album, the Pork Soda. Pork Soda came out a month after Undertow did. That one really made me work hard. That made me think. It made me think hard. Hearing what Herb Alexander could do on his drums. I'm a drummer, you know, and hearing, of course, Danny Carey, the way he played. But like I've said before too, like Danny Carey's stuff, even for me, when I was drumming when I was 14 years old, like it was seemingly so fundamental, because it truly is. Danny Carey's drumming style is very fundamental. It's just, he's got so much power and so much style and so much precision, that's what makes it so difficult, is his level of control and precision. But Herb Alexander, you get more finesse and you get more style and you get more kind of quick whip action and not so kind of like easily chunked up and truncated and cut into like perfect pieces. I don't want to say more style, and I'm, you know, because Danny Carey's full of style, but just so much more kind of pizzazz, lighter in the loafers, and I like the way Tim Alexander plays his drums. And yeah, hearing My Name is Mud for the first time, just like, what? Wait, is he doing that with his feet? What's he doing? Is he playing like on the side, like with a large floor tone? What is he doing? How is he doing it? Man, what a fucking cool riff. And of course, you know, paving the way for, you know, every cool ass fucking bass player to come after him. Like, he really, yeah, wrote that book. Wrote that book on slap guitar, slap bass guitar, and Les Claypool. What a fucking amazing bunch of players. I always forget their fucking guitar player's name. Their original guitar player. I don't know if maybe Les Claypool has worked with a new guitar player in recent history, but anyway, he's magnificent too. Where are we? We're deep in 93 now. Oh God. So that was April of 93. Now we're into May of 93. Probably one of my favorite punk albums ever made. And just the one that kind of really opened my eyes to punk music, because my idea of what punk rock was in 1994 was kind of just like, yeah, a bit askew. If you could probably imagine me being a freshman in high school and thinking I'm fucking punk rock. It's like, yeah, I'm definitely not. But these guys, it didn't matter, because the music was fantastic, and it was kind of like that, it was that type of punk rock that was all inviting. It was just kind of like, everyone's in the fucking club because we all hate the goddamn government. We all feel like we're being fucking ripped off, and this is, you know, incredibly lowbrow and still genius, and can be really highbrow at moments in time, and be really, you know, poetically fucking just, I don't know, spot on, man. Propaganda. How to fucking clean everything, dude. May of 1993. One of my ex-girlfriends actually introduced me to them, and we had that CD, and I just was like, this is fucking great. This is so amazing. Yeah, probably my favorite punk album. One of my favorite punk albums of all time. I don't know if it's my favorite Propaganda album. I think I've mentioned that before. I really like Today's Empires or Tomorrow's Ashes. I think that's my favorite Propaganda album. But this one, like I said, we're talking top 25 greatest of the 90s. And this happens to be, I think, one of the best punk rock albums of the 90s. So there it is. Moving through 93, so many fucking great albums in 1993. In August of 1993, Summertime Feels, dudes. Oh my God. Smashing Pumpkins releases Siamese Dream. Again, one of the most formative and just kind of like meaningful albums to me as a personal rock and roll fan. Every album or excuse me, every song on that album is a fucking masterpiece. And Billy Corgan is a genius, an absolute genius. That album, so much more, I think, than the rest of their work as a band, and maybe Billy Corgan entirely. He has so much work and so much music that he's released, and I don't know. Siamese Dream is just, I feel it's Smashing Pumpkins' magnum opus, the album collectively, just really. And Billy Corgan as a singular kind of like entity in a sense, because he really is the godhead of Smashing Pumpkins. All the rest of the players are such peripheral kind of just, puppets in a sense to his mastery. Jimmy Chamberlin being the exception, because Jimmy Chamberlin's just a phenomenal fucking drummer. And, I'm pretty sure Billy Corgan can't play drums like Jimmy Chamberlin. So there's that. But whatever. Another one of those albums I could just rattle on and just, for a fucking hour, dude. I like the later half of the album. I like the second half of the album, what's that song called? Silver Fuck, Mayonnaise, Geek USA, fucking, the song Bummer. I don't know. I think Bummer is probably my favorite song on the album. I don't know. Is it Cherub Rock to start the album? Oh yeah. Fuck yeah. And even the video for Today. I thought the video for Today and the single, I never got sick of it. And these days, like, if I listen to it with these old ears, it definitely isn't the best song of theirs. And a lot of times if I'm listening to the album these days, like in the car or something, I might just skip the track Today and just go straight to Bummer, because I really like that track. But yeah, magnificent album. Fuck, 1993 was such a good year. What was better, guys? 92, 93, or 94, maybe? Oh, what a great period in rock history. Holy shit. Where are we? So we're in 94 now. Again, had to put some of my favorite kind of punk rock, pop punk on here, because they just were so instrumental in my formative little, high school brain. Loved them dearly. Early on in 94, in February of 94, Green Day released Dookie. A magnificent fucking album. It is so cookie cutter, yet so delicious, and just done in true fashion, man. The guy knows how. He's a songsmith, dude. Billy Joe Armstrong is a songsmith. Again, one of those just fucking riff machines, just, quite a bit less, dick and balls than, the chug machines of like Tom Morello, and just kind of that, Jimmy Page inspired, just awesome kind of like fuel my fire type of fucking riffage, but Billy Joe just like really just fucking like put some fucking awesome energy in that punk rock energy and the 4-chord madness, and really great wordsmith as well too. He's really a really underrated, I guess I should say, lyricist. I've done a previous episode where I've talked about shit that I should have, really gotten into back in the day, but I didn't. So I got to buy Green Day's American Idiot album for cheap, for $1, in perfect condition on CD. And I've been digging into it a little bit. And he truly is a masterful songwriter, and especially a lyricist. Should be up there with big icons of American rock history. I'd love to see those guys get in the Hall of Fame pretty soon. I think they will, if they haven't already. I don't think so, but they ought to be in the running here in the next few years. Pretty extensive, pretty cool career. So hooray for Dookie. Magnificent album, in my opinion. Another just groundbreaker, absolutely groundbreaking album from middle of 94. One of those ones, again, I would just sit up all night and just wait to hear a select few songs from this album on the radio, so I could hit record and not have to pay for an album, because I'm only 14 or 15 years old and I just don't really have any money. So I used to just record stuff off the radio, and I would wait up all night long to hear Black Hole Sun off of Super Unknown by Soundgarden. Yeah, early 94. March of 94. What a magnificent album. Fell on Black Days, dude. Oh my God. All those songs. They're so magnificent. A lot of material on that album again, too. Chris Cornell did a huge bulk of the songwriting, an amazing riff writer as well, songwriter, lyricist. You know, Kim Thayil's, again, you know, power guitar, reminiscent of what you were hearing from, you know, Randy Rhoads and all those guys, you know, throughout the early formative years of hard rock and metal, Jimmy Page, you know, whatever. Kim Thayil, dude. Amazing guitar player. Don't know much about their bass player. He was solid. I know he battled with, you know, some, maybe some drug issues and some emotional, psychological issues, and, you know, was probably instrumental in the band falling apart in the later 90s, 97, I think 98 is when they finally called it quits. But of course, you know, Matt Cameron, I feel, is one of the greatest drummers of all time. Said before, and I'll say it again. Playing with Pearl Jam now for the last 20 odd years, 20 plus years. Amazing fucking career musician. So hooray for Soundgarden and their smash hit Super Unknown, mid 94, moving through 94 again. So, oh my God. Oh yeah. Here we go again. We come full circle. And where we started with Nine Inch Nails, and then Nine Inch Nails brought out, you know, whatever they called it, like Halo 5, Halo 3, I don't know, whatever Downward Spiral was. Oh man, mid 94, that shit shocked the world. I want to fuck you like an animal. Now, what did he say? What's he doing on the screen there? What's all that stuff going on? Like, I was just kind of like, yeah, man. I was 14 years old when I listened to and saw that shit. It was like the same year that like I saw the movie Pulp Fiction. And yeah, my little freshman mind was just kind of split wide open. So this is what the world is really like, eh? Everyone's fucking each other like animals and sticking shotgun in each other's mouth. And all right, cool. Whoo! Pretty vivid year in rock history and film history and whatever else. So we all love that album. That album's fucking fantastic. Yeah, 94 just keeps moving along. Oh, shit. Another one of my favorite fucking bands of all time. This is one of my favorite albums of all time again. Super underrated band. Most people really don't ever talk about, and they should talk about more. The band Helmet, dude. The band Helmet and their album Betty from late 94. That fucking album rips so hard. Oh man, I got to see them live a couple years ago. They came to Portland, and yeah, I mean, you know, Page, what's his name? I can never remember his name. Page, is it Page something? He, sinister fucking guitar player. Holy shit. And you're not thinking he's doing what he's doing until you watch him. And he's like fucking pushing 60 years old and he's still up on stage just talking about being all coked out. He's got a bunch of new players with him, a bunch of young bucks, you know, so his like second guitar player is like, you know, in his 20s, and the bass player's in his 20s, the drummer's young, you know, but he's still up there all silver haired and just like going at it. The guy's a fucking jazz master. I guess he got his degree from here where I'm from, the University of Oregon. He was a jazz guitar major at the University of Oregon. I can't remember his goddamn name right now. It's Page something. Anyway, what a fucking fantastic album. They have tons of albums. Meantime is dope. They're all great, but Betty's my favorite. Betty's definitely my favorite. Oh yeah, they got some notoriety because I think it was right around the same year, right around 94, that the movie The Crow came out, and Helmet was featured on that soundtrack. They had a song on that soundtrack, a song called Milk Toast, and I believe that song actually is from the album we just discussed, Betty, the song Milk Toast. Pretty dope. So yes, love that fucking album. Next, moving on, still in 1994, we're talking like September, late in 94, another one of the huge ones for me, you know, seminal, kind of instrumental in my personal development as a musician, as a music appreciator, player, whatever. Dave Matthews Band. I discovered the Dave Matthews Band. They dropped their big hit, the big one, the first real full length from, you know, a record contract that they drummed up with RCA. Their first one was independently released But this one really kind of like, you know, mega chart topper, all over MTV, just all over the radio waves. Fucking amazing. Under the Table and Dreaming. Bum, ba, da, bum, ba, da. There's all kinds of weird, wacky shit going on. Everyone's like, what the fuck is this weird shit? Everyone's so used to just kind of like Seattle sound, hard rock, art rock, whatever the fuck. And then you got all Dave Matthews Band. I fucking loved it. I loved the shit out of it. So much so that I bought every fucking one of their albums for the next 10 years. Hooray for Dave Matthews Band, whatever. 94 was the shit. And I was all over it. I was just like listening to fucking Tool and banging my head to whatever the fuck else. And then I'm like walking down the street singing Dave Matthews Band and listening to all kinds of dork shit. It was a fun time to be alive. Fun time to be a young adult. Yeah, 94. 95, things started kind of opening up and rock and roll got a little bit kind of more where you could sense and feel it was starting to get a little more kind of like cookie cutter, radio friendly. We were moving away from, you know, the late 80s, early 90s, where it was like things were kind of more just alternative, experimental, you know, psychedelic infused, new wave, no wave, kind of like inspired, more punk inspired. Now we're getting to more like, okay, these guys are catching wind, the Seattle sound caught big. Everyone's trying to recreate that Seattle sound again of the early 90s. So you get a lot of, you know, not really like copycat groups, but you just get a lot of like, you know, pap, you know, it's getting the music industry or whatever, you know, it's just getting flooded with a bunch of stuff that's, you know, pretty much just kind of mediocre in my opinion. So it's getting a little bit more difficult is my point. Getting more difficult to kind of like find things. You're getting older. You're like, okay, I'm like, you know, in middle of high school now and like music's still great, but it's like, you got to work a little bit harder to find shit that's your friends aren't going to make fun of you for listening to, you know, because it's just kind of garden variety bullshit. There was a lot of garden variety bullshit that just started being just kind of like thwarted at us. What was first in 95? Oh no, I forgot the very last album of 1994 that is very important to me because it is my favorite album of all time. And I've discussed it before, but very late in 1994, before all this things started getting a little more difficult, like I was saying, Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam released another album that meant the world to me. It's my favorite album of all time. I'm talking about Vitalogy. Vitalogy from Pearl Jam, late 94. I waited in the rain, in the dark, cold rain of Oregon in November, outside of the House of Records. No, it was the Record Garden. Beg your pardon. It was the Record Garden on the corner of West 11th Avenue and Willamette Street in Eugene. And I paid probably $19.99 for that album. And I was the happiest kid in the world. I took it home and just opened it all up and just all shiny and all these beautiful pictures and it meant the world to me. It's my favorite album of all time. So I've done other videos and things and talked about it. So if you even care at all, you can go watch those videos. But we're moving into 1995. Here we go, 1995. Cool fucking year. First in 95 was Hooray. An album from another one of my favorite bands, Radiohead. Radiohead put out their first real big one, The Bends, early on in 1995. What a magnificent album. Again, a perfect specimen. Every song from beginning to end. You know, I had heard, obviously, Creep on the radio. I liked it. I knew who Radiohead was, but I never dove so deep into Pablo Honey when I was like in high school and stuff that I just didn't really, it didn't resonate with me and I didn't really absorb anything more than just kind of like Creep, because it didn't take very long. You know, Pablo Honey was probably released in 93 and it didn't take very long for the Bends to just kind of like absorb us all. It was just everywhere. Everyone loved it. It was all over MTV, High and Dry. What else had a big radio single from? There was at least 3 radio singles and a few videos on MTV. Fucking amazing. Fake Plastic Trees, High and Dry. What else got a video for that? Who cares? That album is fucking perfect. It's amazing. What a great way to start out 1995. Holy shit. Moving into 95 even more. What's after that? Just 3 months later, another one of my very favorite, incredibly underrated, really not talked about. No one ever really gives this as much love as it truly does deserve. Just because it had that one real radio single that, you know, that was the only one that everyone really latched onto. I got a girl who smells so sweet. Talking about Tripping Daisy, dude. Their album I Am an Elastic Firecracker. That shit came out. It was like in the summertime of 1995. What a fantastic fucking album. It's so underrated, so fucking good. Some really magnificent hits, again, toward the kind of like later half of the album. I mean, the first half's dope and it's really catchy and cool. Like I said, you know, catchy hits like, you know, I Got a Girl, the song Piranhas, really catchy, really cool psychedelic pop. You know, hard. It's pretty hard rock in some places. The latter half of the album is pretty insanely cool psychedelic hard rock. Song called Prick. Check that song out. It's a fucking epic song. It's really amazing. But yeah, I love that album dearly. Yeah, had to be on my big list. I'm a big 25. Moving on through the list. Again in 95, late 95, like October 95. I remember when this came out. Holy shit. Because I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure how to feel. The first single, I didn't really like the first single. I think 1979 wasn't the first single. I don't remember the first single, but I wasn't sure about it. Billy Corgan shaved his head and started getting kind of like goth and they were always kind of artsy. They were an art band. They truly were like an art rock band. But I don't know. It just felt less kind of like hard rock and felt more kind of like pretentious kind of art rock. And but I still loved it, and I still think it's one of the greatest albums ever made. Double album, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness came out late 95. Rewrote the Pumpkins book. Like I said, they were just kind of like psych art, hard rock, just kind of really guitar rock. You know, Billy Corgan was just, you know, he loved 70s rock. He loved butt rock, Kiss. He also loved prog rock. Yes. You know, you could tell he loved and adored that 70s rock sound. And I guess Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness was kind of a departure from that, I feel, and way more of like a big leap into the world of kind of like I said, goth and art rock, and just kind of like, people weren't releasing double albums in the 90s. Nobody released double albums in the 90s. Like, that was a big fucking deal, you know, and the artwork was so kind of like elaborate and girly, you know, feminine sort of in a sense. And, you know, when you're a 15-year-old kid in high school, you're just like, I don't know about this. But so many fucking great hits, dude. I think probably Muzzle. Oh, dude, the song Muzzle is a dope song. What's that other song? It's Ruby something. Oh, my daughter's name is Ruby, so if I ever see a song that has Ruby in the title, I kind of latch onto it. Great fucking song. The radio hits are good. 1979 is a good. That's one of the songs that, like, at first I didn't dig it, and then years down the road, when you really listen to it with kind of like mature ears and a more mature mind, I really love and appreciate that fucking song. It's a great pop rock song. Yeah, so magnificent album. Yeah, 95, out with a bang. Early 96 again. My fucking mind is getting peeled wide open. My third eye is getting peeled wide open and getting squeegeed quite clean by the band Tool and their groundbreaking album Anima. Introducing a new bass player to the mix, Paul D'Amour. Jumped ship for whatever reason, who cares? He's a magnificent artist, songwriter, instrumentalist. I'm glad he probably got some comeuppance for all that artistry that he made with Tool. You know, huge part of the Undertow album. Like, that was a giant album for them, instrumental in their entire career and catapulting them so they could do this type of stuff. But they introduced a new bass player into the mix, Justin Chancellor from Britain. And what a fantabulous fit for the band. Justin Chancellor, finally, you know, quite a bit of addition to the songwriting team, where in Adam Jones, you could tell all through, you know, the first EP, the Opiate EP, and then into their first major release, Undertow, Adam Jones, the guitar player, you could tell was doing all of the songwriting, and whatever Paul D'Amour and whatever he could do. And of course, Maynard has never really been involved in any of the songwriting in any way, shape, and form, besides being the lyricist, of course. So yeah, this one was like heavy on the riffage by Justin Chancellor, unique, individualistic, smart, playing with new rhythms and just all kinds of beautiful effects on his guitar, and really ingenuitive, cool shit that nobody had ever really thought of or heard before. Taking rock and roll to a whole new transcendental place, in my opinion, in 1996. And that I just kind of like listened to nothing else but that album for an entire year straight. That's not true, but practically that was the one that I just wore out. Anima is an absolute masterpiece. 96, nothing else of note, honestly, for me. Of course, there was dozens of albums from around that era and that period in 96 that are magnificent, but just don't quite make the top 25 tier, if you know what I'm talking about. A couple off the top of my brain, I could, mention, I don't know, Pearl Jam put an album out that year that was fucking great. No Code was fantastic. Yeah, but, here's my top 25 list. I'm just going to keep going along because there's only a couple left, guys. So thanks again for joining me on this fun little journey through the 90s, this trip of my personal favorites. And objectively speaking, some I think we could probably argue are the best 25 albums. So throw me some comments. Tell me what you think what should be on your list, or what you think I should have put on mine. I know everyone's going to be like, well, where's all the Red Hot Chili Peppers, brah? Where's all this? And where the fuck you? It's my list. It's important to me, and we'll just finish it here. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Throw me some comments. I like to have playful, fun banter with you guys about music. So moving into 1997. Again, things are getting even more difficult. We talked about how 95 was kind of weird, and 96 even worse. In 96, introductions of stuff, Korn and Deftones, and all of this god-awful shit. What's this Limp Bizkit? What's this? And you're just kind of like, ew, what the fuck? And Eminem? What? Okay, interesting. I'm just gonna stick to my Tool, and I'm just gonna do this thing over here. Radiohead might put out a new album pretty soon. Thank God they did. 1997, OK Computer, another masterpiece. Needed another masterpiece to kind of like butter your bread after just choking on Anima for a year straight, just because like you wanted to get every little bit and piece of resource from it, every little ounce of protein that you could suck dry from Anima, and being just an absolutely insane trip and amazing album. And then OK Computer just kind of like, again, just like flops you over the fucking barrelhead and just gives it to you. Oh, thank you guys. How could it be any better than Ben's? Oh yeah. There they go. And every album since, just kind of reinventing themselves. Pretty much every album. That's what Radiohead did. Thank the stars for bands like Radiohead. 1997 was a fun year. Again, I spent the whole year just like ingesting every bit and piece of that album. It's like all of 1996 was dedicated to Tool's Anima, and all of 1997 was dedicated to Radiohead's OK Computer. And that's okay. We do that in life. And yeah, as you get through the end of the 90s, you're turning into an adult. At least I did. And I graduated high school in 1998, and then kept listening to rock music. But at that point in my life, I was like fairly secure and fairly, I was like kind of happy with what I had discovered over the last decade. And I was just kind of like amassing all these neat ideas and things. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to sit on this for a while. I didn't like where rock and roll was going, all of this shit that was pervading and kind of like poking its ugly head through my little, happy bubble. I hated so much of it. It was so god awful. And I couldn't listen to the radio anymore because the radio was becoming so atrocious. And guys, we had the internet. Of course we had the internet, but we didn't have big places to share tons of media. And we didn't have, of course we did. Everybody knows about all those places, but I wasn't a super smart kid, and I wasn't a computer nerd. And so I didn't know where to go to like find free music. And that shit, Napster didn't exist yet. And like, none of that shit existed yet. So we were all still like buying our albums at record stores. It was great. But those days were coming to an end. It was getting harder and harder to find quality artistry. That sounds really pretentious and shitty of me, doesn't it? But the vast majority of it was just hardly palatable, in my opinion. Hardly palatable. 1998 saw a magnificent release that was worthy of my list here, in my opinion. It's my favorite of the band Fugazi. I love Fugazi. I love their brand of insanely cool, hardcore, punk, straight edge, just kind of like, politically savvy, just really smart, cool, amazing, ingenuitive, interesting fucking rock and roll. I love it dearly. End Hits from 1998 was, again, like kind of a integral part of me and my new kind of leap into adulthood, and seeing things through a new lens, focused a little bit more clearly, I think maybe. I hadn't really developed any severe addictions at this point, not quite. I was definitely experimenting heavily with all kinds of interesting substances. This was probably right around the time I had my first psychedelic experience, right around age 17 or 18. So things were getting kind of wide open for me. It was interesting. But yeah, love that Fugazi album. Love all their albums, but my favorite is End Hits from 1998. And here we go, guys. We're closing out the year. This is the last two selections that I wanted to talk about this evening on my top 25 greatest albums of the 1990s. Really fucking magnificent band, fun band. This was a sound that, I'd heard for years, but I'd never heard it done so elegantly and with so much, so much dick and balls, but still so much poise, you know what I mean? And artistry and cool, like taking that hardcore sound, that punk, that skate rock, and just kind of like metamorphosizing over and over again every year. And the new album sounds even cooler and different. It's faster and it's more furious. This album, I don't know, dude. AFI is the shit. And I think, did I pick Black Sails in the Sunset? Yeah, Black Sails in the Sunset. I don't know. I think I love and appreciate that album most out of their early career. Things totally changed with Sing the Sorrow. By that point, they were a whole new band. That was like 2004, right? So this was still like, I don't think they put anything else out. Did The Art of Drowning come after Black Sails in the Sunset? I don't know. The timeline for me with AFI in the early years is a little bit sketchmo, but I don't know, dude. Black Sails is the shiznit. Best album of late 98, early 99. And then to cap it all off for me, kind of mid to end 99, I got to play a show in Eugene and I opened for these guys. And this was for me just kind of the full-blown step into like a new world, a new head, kind of a new pair of shoes, just kind of a new set of ideologies, a new set of, just a new me, a new set of ideas and a new way of looking at the world. And the band Neurosis, their album Times of Grace. They dropped that album that year in 99. They came touring through Eugene in a band I was in with a bunch of guys. So we got to open up for them. And it was fucking amazing. And that fucking album is the motherfucking shit. I'd say probably my favorite, like, of what you could construe as, just kind of like doom, dark metal doom. It's probably one of my favorite doom albums. I don't know, everything Yob has ever done is pretty dope. And I would classify those as some of my favorite doom albums, but as is Times of Grace by Neurosis. I thought that a great way to cap it off. 25 of the most intense, most awesome, greatest albums of the 90s. Sure did love the 90s. It was a fun time in my life. I hope it was a great time for you guys too. Things were wild. Things were wild in the world. What else was going on? Fucking the Bill Clinton presidency, the Rodney King beating, all kinds of whack shit happening all throughout the 90s. Oh man, we had a school shooting. One of the more notorious, I know there's been a fuck ton of school shootings, guys, geez. But this one was like one of the more kind of like not overblown, but one of the bigger blown ones in the media. 1998. Was it in 98? It had to have been. I think it was early on in 98. I was a senior in high school. It was like the very end of my high school career, and a kid named Kip Kinkle walked into one of the other high schools. I went to Springfield High School in Springfield, Oregon, but we have another one called Thurston High School. Kid walked in, shot a bunch of people, wounded like 25 or 30, killed a couple people, like I think a janitor and another kid. But before he went to school and did that, he fucking murdered his own parents. Just up the road. Oh man. Oh, why am I talking about this? Holy shit. But yeah, 90s, man. Crazy fun time. Great fucking music. Great decade for music. Fight me. Anyone's got a better decade in rock and roll history? Tell me about it. Of course, the 70s were fantastic. The 80s were fantastic. It was all magnificent. Rock and roll's here to stay. No one can kill it. Rock and roll can never die. Thanks for joining me tonight, everybody, here at the Square the Circle Music Channel. I'm your pal, Mage. Come back and visit me another night. Don't forget to like and subscribe and do all that fun shit. And, keep them clean. Peace in the crease, motherfuckers.